Today on Rebel Then King, I need to ask for your help picking out my new character for my next campaign. Welcome, adventurers. Sorry, not sorry for that little bit of bait and switch. But in all seriousness, I do have a campaign wrapping up in the next few sessions and a new one starting, and we have decided to pick new characters. And I'm kind of torn on what to do. I have decided that I do want to play as a martial character. I ideally would like to be what I would call a true martial, meaning that at level 1, I am starting with a +4 strength or a +4 dex. For background, I have already played as an alchemist, as a wizard, as a bard, and as a kineticist, and I do tend to play support roles, as you might imagine. I've decided I would like to continue to play support and not just lean fully into damage, though I definitely want to be a weapon user, and I do want to do more damage and have that sort of be my primary focus with a strong secondary focus on support, exploration, other things. So I've kind of narrowed it down to a few options that I am going to walk you through now. If at any point you have ideas, suggestions, questions, or if you notice something I do incorrectly in one of my builds, please let me know, especially that last one. Leave me a comment that says, hey, dummy, those are both status bonuses. You can't do that. That saves me the trouble of, getting all excited about something that isn't actually possible. The first character that I want to talk through is one that I have named Lancar. Let's take a look at Lancar. Now, he is a lizard folk ranger, and what you're going to see in these builds is that I'm going through a big emphasis on thrown weapons. Not in every build, but this is the one that got me started. This is still probably the build I am most inclined towards playing. Leave me a comment if you can guess where I got the name for this. I mean, obviously it sounds kind of lizard folk, but it does have some more meaning to it. So let's talk through the build options here and my overall philosophy with this build. I want to make a close ranged supporting martial. I like thrown weapons because, well, you've seen my knife throwing video perhaps. It's something I like to do in real life, which I've never used in the game. And the cool thing about thrown weapons is that they are range, yes, but you do get to add your strength modifier to damage, unlike using a crossbow or a bow, for example. So you have the ability to deal some pretty significant damage from range. However, it is a little difficult because then you become a little bit multiple attribute dependent because you need strength for that damage, but you need dexterity for your accuracy. Now, what I've done with this build, let's first talk through it. The basics: lizard folk, bounty hunter, ranger. I've never played as a ranger. I like that rangers have this stealth, or not stealth, but survival, nature training, hunt prey. That gives me a little bit of that, I can do something outside of combat with the mechanics of this build, which I don't think is necessarily true of all martials, at least not from the class itself, from background and other things, sure. But I like that we get this little bit of, there's something else about this class that's not just purely martial. I really like this warden spell. I also like playing a little gish, as you know, so having a little bit of magic I think is going to be really fun. And with distracting decoy, its range is only 10 feet, but remember, I'm going to be a thrown weapons build, so I will probably be within that range anyway. The spell, you conjure a colorful, fast-moving shape, such as a small bird or other animal that draws your target's eye. They attempt a will save. On a success, they're unaffected. On a failure, the creature is off guard until the start of your next turn. Critical failure, but the creature, same as failure, but the creature also takes a -2 circumstance penalty to attacks while it's off guard. So that is a great team debuff. You can get in there, see an enemy, and distract it with your distracting decoy. Now, this led me down the path of what to do with ability scores, which we're going to take a look at in a second. First, while I'm on this page, weapons, I went with the chakram because, well, it's thrown, D8 damage, which is awesome. So I have a D8 plus 2, at least with this set of ability scores. And I did go with the Hunter's Edge Precision here, thinking I will be probably needing to move to get within range, then doing that. Distracting Decoy is my first attack, or first sort of combat action number 2. And then I get a single throw. I'll be doing a lot of hunt prey, move, throw. So kind of focusing on one really good attack per round. And I think that is where precision works out best. Before we look at level up stuff, let's take a look at some of my crazy amount of notes. And I'll just talk you through my thoughts on ability scores. Right now, I have this built out with a +4 Dex, a +2 Strength, and a +3 Wisdom. Now, the crazy thing is, I've done the math. Even when throwing and using Dexterity for your accuracy, you are actually a little bit better off using Strength more than Dex. That constant bonus damage on these thrown weapons actually makes up for the lack of attack accuracy. But it feels a little bit wrong to me, especially with precision. And in fact, I went through and the, boy, it's buried in notes, but somewhere in here I do go through and I actually did figure out that with precision, it does make more sense to be fully dex-based. If you're making 2 attacks per turn, though, it actually helps to be strength-based, even when using a thrown weapon using dexterity for your attack roll. Wild. As far as the wisdom, well, remember I was excited about being able to track and do those exploration activities. Wisdom is the key ability score for, or the ability score for your nature and survival. That's important. It's also for medicine. And as we're going to see here, I'm doing a somewhat of a healer build with this as well. The other thing is your warden spells are going to use wisdom as your spell casting modifier. So if I want someone to fail their save against my spell DC, I want a high wisdom. That is also why I went with the lizard folk, because their stats are boost in strength, wisdom, and free. So I did dexterity there. Now, some of the other options here, I do have a +3 strength, +3 dex, +3 wisdom across the board. I kind of like that it's +3 everything, and then a 0 con and 0 charisma, and 0 intelligence as well. I mean, it's just very symmetric, and there's something about that that still draws me in quite a lot. I might do that option, though I will say that maximum dexterity also helps out with stealth, and I can do thievery with it too, which leads into, as I level up, I want to take quick draw, obviously, for thrown weapons. We usually play with free archetype. I'm assuming we are in this campaign. So I'm one with the rogue dedication. I'm going to pick up skill feats, risky surgery, battle medicine I'm also going to pick up. So I'm becoming the team healer at this point, at least the non-magical healer. And then at level 4, I can get sneak attacker and do even more precision damage on my strikes, especially pairing with that warden spell I have of distracting decoy. Well, now that creature is off guard, so I get to use some rogue sneak attack damage with the sneak attacker. Very cool stuff. So yeah, this is a very fun build. One thing I forgot to mention is I am going to pick up a little ancestral magic as well at level 1, and I'm going to pick up stabilize. Again, kind of being the team healer. I don't really care too much about other cantrips. I don't want to be using them. I'd rather use my weapons, but I like stabilize for that ability to say, combat's wrapping up, we're doing okay. Someone is dying. They might fully die unless we prolong combat by taking time to go and try to heal them or something. Stabilize is just nice to say, you're fine, and we'll do a treat wounds and fix you up for real after the combat encounter. So there we go. There's my first option, maybe my best option, Lancar, but let's take a look at some others. The next build I have is Venar, and for this one, I'm going with a kobold swashbuckler. And as you can see, it's a very different style than the Lancar option. Lancar is tough and rugged, and this is a very sophisticated build. Background is Servant. I am going to say, as the backstory of this character, it is a servant who poisoned his masters, which is why I'm dabbling in poisons with this build. It is a swashbuckler, not an alchemist, but I did go with the heritage of Venom Tail Cobalt that allows me to, once a day, poison a weapon that I'm holding with a tail toxin and make a strike with it, and it deals, I think, persistent poison damage, if I remember. I went with Snare Setter as an ancestry feat because it just seems kind of fun. That's another thing I haven't done a lot with is snares. Now, why Swashbuckler? One, I like Swashbuckler, especially after the remaster changes. Remember, with Precise Strike, you now deal an extra 2 points of damage, not just when you have Panache, but just all the time when you are using a agile or finesse weapon. So I like that a lot. I like that you, of course, gain Panache even if you fail at the check to do it. It's action tax, not an action and success on a check tax, which is nice. And here's the thing. Jumping ahead just a little bit, we're going to go with a Poisoner dedication for this one that will give me the ability to do 4 totally free, don't need to check, alchemical poisons every morning. Now, alchemical poisons are great, but it does require striking and doing damage with that strike in order to apply. So what ability does a swashbuckler have that's going to help out? Confident Finisher. Remember, with a Confident Finisher strike, you are going to deal half of your precision damage even if you miss. And I did look this up. I was like, wait a second, a poison is only applied on slashing or piercing damage, not on precision damage. But the Confident Finisher failure says you deal half your precise strike damage to the target. This damage type is that of your weapon or unarmed attack use. So, it is not precision damage in this case when you miss with a Confident Finisher. It is slashing or piercing if you are using a slashing or piercing weapon. Which, on that note, I'm going with a Kukri in one hand and a Main Gauche in the other. Why 2? Well, first of all, great combination of weapons. They are both are agile and finesse. Awesome. The Main Gauche has parry, which is why I went with the class feat Extravagant Parry. The Kukri has trip. So remember, I want it to be a bit of a debuffing martial. So what I can do is trip with the Kukri. The other thing is, well, the Kukri has a higher damage dice. So really, if I'm just slashing it out, I'm going to use that all of the time. But what I can do is poison the Main Gauche in between combats so that it is poisoned, and only when I need to deal a poison blow do I use that weapon. So ideally, I've kind of laid out here, I do not have nearly as many notes for this character as the others. I can stride in, I can attempt to trip. Ideally, I trip. Even if I don't, I might be able to gain some panache for the, hey, that was a crazy kind of thing to do. And also, I'm playing as the gymnast, so actually, when you are training in athletics, when you grapple, reposition, shove, or trip, so trip is covered by my bravado traits, my bravado actions, I'll gain panache even if I miss on that trip. And then I attack with a Confident Finisher. Even if I miss, I still do some damage, and I still would apply a poison in that case. And the poisons, remember, are not just extra damage, but they will stack some debuffs with them. They have other, effects that will leave you sickened or something like that. So this is another good way to get in a little bit of debuffing with the martial build, not just focusing purely on damage, but on a little bit of other things going on. I like this build a lot. It leans a little more towards martial because it's a limited number of poisons per day, though I will say with doing a lot of that tripping, you're going to be helping out the whole team as well. So I think this is a pretty fun build. On the note of fun builds, let's look at Flug, vulgar, my goblin bandit swashbuckler. Another swashbuckler this time. And now I'm actually going back to thrown weapons with the flying blade class feat that allows you to do your precise strike stuff with a thrown weapon. So, and then also I should say the style for this is Fencer. When I create a distraction or feint, the action gains the bravado trait. I'm arming myself with some hatchets, light hammers, because I might need to do different types of damage, and then a dog slicer in case I get into melee and want to just stick with melee. I should say for both of these builds, everything we've looked at so far that does any throwing kind of stuff, I'm going with the quick draw equivalent, brandishing draw in this case, where I can produce a weapon. You interact to draw a weapon, then either strike or use a one-action finisher. So that's going to be a huge action economy saver for me. Other things I'm going to do with this build is I'm going to stack up like the skill feat Lengthy Diversion. So remember, when you create a distraction or a feint, the action gains the bravado trait. Not exactly the same as Lengthy Diversion, but I am going to be charismatic with this build. That's why I went with a goblin. Goblins are charisma and dexterity boost, great for a swashbuckler. So I am going to try to do as much as I can with my charisma in this build, which means that this one actually doesn't have any sort of support options truly directly in combat, other than intimidation, of course. I can demoralize, which is not a bad thing to do. But it can be a bit of a face of the party. And then also when dexterity based, that means I'll be good at sneaking and stealthing and thieving, which is also, just plays well into this bandit background. The other thing about the bandit background, I have the free feat group coercion with it, which means that is another charisma based feat. Very good. So I'm leaning into charisma abilities, but I do have a very nice full +4 dex, +3 strength. That's a lot of damage with these thrown hatchets. This, I think, is my highest damage potential build. So if I'm feeling like the rest of my party, which, by the way, I'm not exactly sure what everybody's doing, I feel like if we've got a lot of other things covered, I might go with this and just say, I'm going to do the most damage possible while maintaining my cool thrown weapon ability. So that's that. Probably should have had everybody at level 1 just to compare things here. But anyway, this is my almost pure damage with a little bit of charisma option as well. Very exciting, though I have played charisma. I'm playing as a bard right now, and I feel like this might be a little bit too close to my warrior muse bard, though I'm not throwing hatchets with that build. I would be with this one, so that's a plus. And then my last build option, I didn't really want to do this, a repeat class for me, Alchemist. This is Rising Arm and Resolution, which is easily my favorite of all of the names that I have come up with for these characters. I'm seeing this as sort of a medicine man in his clan and is, well, going to be a toxicologist. Now, I don't like repeating classes. I'm not totally against it, but usually I like to try something new. But I will say I played a pre-remaster Alchemist, which is so different than the new Alchemist that it's basically a new class. I also played as a bomber, and now I would be playing as a toxicologist, which I think got the most improvements of all of the subclasses in the remaster. So there's something to it. I would stick with this thrown weapon idea here with a lot of javelins. I would also arm myself at least with a dagger. Remember, my weapon selections are a little bit limited here. The Alchemist is not trained in martial weapons like the other builds we have looked at, the Ranger and the Swashbuckler. That is another thing that makes me hesitate a little bit on this build because remember I said I do want to play as a martial. Now, technically an alchemist isn't doing magic, so it's maybe considered a martial, but it's kind of just a dedicated support class. And really, if you consider that bombs deal elemental damage and sometimes do a little bit of damage plus a debuff, that is so much more like cantrips and spells than it is weapons that I almost consider them in the same class as a spellcaster, even though alchemy and magic are totally separated in this system. Anyway, what I would do with this build is I kind of went through and I came up with an idea of what to do with my advanced alchemy and quick alchemy. For advanced alchemy, I would concoct 4 of the same poison every morning and 4 elixirs of life. Hand out those elixirs of life to the team so everyone has an emergency heal. 4 of the same poison. Why? I would, in between combats, poison the blade of one of my allies. And then I would sort of pair up with that ally. And what we would do is pre-poison one of the weapons, like I said, and then, depending on whoever goes first in initiative order, we pick an enemy and both target that enemy. I, as a toxicologist, can use my field vials to quick alchemy a new poison. And then because I'm a toxicologist, I can apply that poison for 1 action and then I can strike. This is why it also is helpful to be ranged because I don't need to put a stride action in there and be out of actions. That ally of mine with the poison blade can attack the same creature. And remember, if you both hit, both do damage, and the creature fails both of its saves, that poison instantly advances its stage. So you can go and do 2 weapon strikes that will also deal an additional, whatever it's going to be, like maybe a D4 at stage 1 and then a D6 at stage 2 damage of poison damage, and also add some debuffs onto it. So this is a very strong, potentially strong, I should say, support debuffing option. I also really like the skunk bomb. That is a debuffing bomb. That is the thing that is fun about the Alchemist, I think. Sure, this is a toxicologist. I would lean into poisons, but there are only, I think, a relatively small handful of poisons available compared to bombs and, well, other items in the book. So pick up some bombs. I'm going to be ranged. I'm going to be dexterity, well, secondary dexterity based anyway. I can pick up some bombs. Or formulas for bombs, I should say. And then I can maybe see that there's a good target that we want to debuff from range, and I can use the skunk bomb on that or something else. I've picked up my poisons. I've also kind of decided it makes sense to play secondary, somewhat healing support. Like I said, the elixir of life, but then also anti-plague, antidote. One enormous improvement with the new Alchemist is the fact that your versatile vials and quick alchemy can be replenished throughout the day. So you are not punished with the awful feeling of, I think maybe we should proactively make some antidotes in case we get poisoned or something like that. Or, and then that situation ends up not happening and you've just wasted some of your, it used to be called infused reagents for the day, and you just have to wait for the next day. Well, now you wait 10, 20, 30 minutes and you've got everything back and you can do that again. So this makes me so much more excited to play the Alchemist, knowing that I can actually play around with my items throughout the day. Sure, I might run out or get very low in a big, long engagement or back-to-back engagements, but so much better than it used to be. But not truly martial. So I don't know. So what do you think, adventurers? I've got 4 different options. Every time I go through, I'm pretty excited by them all. What would your ranking be? I think I put the Throne Lizard Folk Ranger at the top. Then probably, I basically think I have it in order, reverse order. Lizard Folk Ranger, Kobold Poisoner, Throwing Kobold, Toxicologist. Maybe. It also depends on what the rest of my team comes up with. Everyone had lots of ideas. I don't think we had anybody completely settled or sold on anything. So who knows? Let me know about it in the comments. Of course, point out some other good ideas for these builds or similar builds. Maybe there's a class or something I'm overlooking. I would love to hear about that. And yeah, let me know the things that I did incorrectly in these builds, because it happens every single time. I get so excited about something and then I realize I'm not actually trained in that weapon, or those bonuses don't actually stack, or hey, my perfect plan is 4 actions, not 3, and I can't carry that item over, that action over across turns, so I can actually never do it. So yeah, leave something in the comments that's gonna leave me disappointed, I guess. Catch you next time.